Don't miss the inaugural All-American Cup Team Tennis Tournament, presented by Thomas J. Henry, at the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas, November 11 through 13. The All-American Cup features 10 top men's U.S. players competing on 2 teams, East versus West, each captained by the greatest tennis doubles team of all time, Mike and Bob Bryan. You don't want to miss this. Brother versus brother, East versus West, best versus best. Tickets on sale now at allamericantenniscup.com.
Anyway, so like we mentioned, we're me and Mike Craven. This is like a unique situation for me because usually I'm not involved in like a coaching search, but obviously being a former beat writer, being an alum of Texas State, I do still have some connections there. And so I've been, me and Craven have been kind of tag teaming this a little bit, this news. And I guess the latest, what we can more or less confirm is that this feels like a 2-man race.
Yep. Yeah, Kev put out a report of that earlier today, and I think I'm hearing the exact same stuff. I think you're hearing the exact same stuff.
I am too.
This felt like a 3-man race from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It was G.J. Kinney, Casey Keeler, Eric Morris. I think it's assumed that Kinney's going to get a quote-unquote better job. Sure. And, whether Tulsa is a better job than Texas State or not may be debatable, but he played quarterback there. That's his alma mater. That makes sense. The American, a little bit more money than the Sun Belt. So so I get that one. So it does feel like it's a 2-man race between Sam Houston head coach Casey Keeler and Washington State offensive coordinator Eric Morris, who, of course, was the head coach at Incarnate Word for 4 years before this past season. And I think both of those guys would be great hires. I think I could make arguments on why each one of them would be better than the other. And
sure.
If you're Texas State, it does feel like you're in a position to land. You're gonna get a good grade either way. Mm-hmm. Like either of these guys is going to be good for your program, probably a step in the right direction. And so I would be surprised if this thing lingers into the weekend. I would think by Friday afternoon, Saturday, we know who's the head coach is going to be.
I was about to say the speed at which this materialized, right? Immediately we heard 3 names come to the surface. We heard some other peripheral names, right? You check the article we have where Mike's been updating kind of. Let's just put it this way. The article that he's been updating with candidates is a mix of people we think will be good, but also names that we've heard from people, right? So there are names that are in there that maybe haven't been publicly acknowledged or things like that, but we've heard were at least contacted or at least in the dossier, I guess you can say. But more or less, it pretty quickly narrowed down to those 3, and then quickly as Tulsa opened up, it became more presumptive, probably more on Texas State's end, that G.J. Kinney probably wouldn't. If it came down to the 2, it's hard to. You never want to be the one that's rejected, right?
And he's going to listen to offers.
Yes.
And Texas State wants this to get done.
Yes.
And he's still in the playoffs.
Right. And you never want. And like I said, you never want to be rejected. Right. You never want to be the one that's like they offered G.J. Kinney and he turned it down for Tulsa. Right. You never want that to happen. So they took themselves more or less out of that situation. And now, it's down to 2 very capable, very interesting, different candidates too. Right?
Yes,
very different. And so I think, like you mentioned, this is going to get done pretty quickly. Texas, everybody I've heard, right, except for not ironically, Texas State's obviously not going to say anything, right? A lot of they're the ones doing the search, but talking around the program and talking to people we know, they have been contacted, right? Those 2 have been contacted. And they've been transparent, right? About as transparent and clear as like these are the 2 guys, right? Basically. And so I think that's something that's been kind of refreshing because typically you see like smoke screens kind of everywhere, and typically you see a bunch of people like, I don't know, they're this guy over here, and you throw like 6 names out there. Right. Like I remember when I was covering the Jake Spavital when they originally hired Jake Spavital. Like 7 names came across. Right. You're like, who's really involved?
Because they're floating it.
Right, exactly.
They're trying to see what the reaction's going to be.
Exactly. And one name that did float out that I'm so happy that did not float around this time was Kendall Briles. I'm so sorry. I will say that right now. One name that floated out when Jake Spavital was hired was Kendall Briles. Immediately got shot down by the entire fan base, and that name went away very quickly. Yeah. So I was very happy that did not happen this time. But so there have been names floated around, but nothing solid outside of these 2. And so I think, like you mentioned, this will be pretty good. So, keep it tuned to us, TexasFootball.com. Mike Craven will have everything ready to go. As soon as we hear something, as soon as we have something solid, this is moving fast. We're trying to move fast with it, and we'll be updating you because, Yeah, early signing period's coming up, and Texas State has a bunch of players entering the portal. So
portal opens Friday for
they
business.
They are trying to.
November 5th
Yes.
is when that opens for business. They want to have somebody
December
in
5th.
there. Yeah, December 5th. I'm sorry. They want to have somebody in there by then. I'm trying to see what date December 5th is. So that's next month. That's next Monday.
Wow.
You know?
So I was about to say, they want to have somebody in. That's why you're seeing.
They want to have somebody in the chair.
Yes.
Introduce press conference.
Talking
all
to
that
people who are maybe announced they're entering the portal, trying to bring them back, right? Because you got to recruit the team again, basically, and then see what they can do on their own. So we'll be in touch. We'll be all over that because we presumably got about 3 more days, ideally, if Texas State has their calendar right. We got about 3 more days of this search. So,
but speaking of Kendall Briles,
oh man, speaking of unfortunate coordinator hires also, Texas A&M is in the market for a new offensive coordinator, firing Daryl Dickey, who I don't know, kind of like offensive coordinator asterisk, because it's Jimbo Fisher's offense, it's Jimbo Fisher's play calls, it's Jimbo Fisher's game planning.
It's just like a dummy.
It's
it's a test dummy. Like it's just kind of there.
He's
not going to do anything.
Don't get me wrong.
He's an assistant to the regional manager.
Right. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I understand Daryl Dickey does.
That is what it is.
I understand Daryl Dickey does some stuff. Right.
100%.
He was a very accomplished head coach in North Texas. Right.
Awesome dude.
Yeah, awesome dude. It's Jimbo Fisher's offense. Nobody was looking at
Exactly.
Daryl Dickey and saying, "Why is Daryl Dickey's offense not running well?" Right.
100%.
Assistant to the regional
And so
manager.
Mike Craven put out an article because this presumably opens a door for Jimbo Fisher to have an outside voice in, right?
Potentially.
Presumably.
Potentially.
So Mike Craven threw together some options.
Yep.
Jimbo
Some
Fisher,
realistic, some probably not.
Yeah. Jimbo Fisher hasn't given us a call on this podcast yet, but we're hoping that he takes a look at Mike Craven's recommendations.
Yeah.
Because we think we can help fix some of this.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, exactly.
He
here
needs
to
to hop on. Like,
look, that's
we are
why
here
he
to
needs to
help.
call us.
It's
right
one of
now.
my off-season goals.
Get him on the
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
finally.
It's gonna happen.
We're here.
Even if I got to walk into it and just
I will guarantee
blindside
you.
him.
I will guarantee you this.
Like 2020 when he's walking to his truck outside, like, hey,
Yeah,
coach,
right.
I gotta go quick,
I guarantee you, we will have the new Texas State head coach on twice before we have Jimbo Fisher on again.
We might have already had him on a couple times.
I know.
That's possible.
Good point.
That's great. So, Mike, let's talk about this article a little bit. You can go check it out on TexasFootball.com for all of his reasonings on all the guys. But let's also talk about why maybe some of those guys aren't gonna be the answer.
Right.
This is Mike Craven will do a little bit of insight and reporting into what he's hearing.
So I put together that list, because those lists do well,
sure.
for the most part. And I think some of them are really, like Garrett Riley, I think would be an excellent hire.
Mm-hmm.
A&M can afford him. They can pry him from TCU, who's about to play, for Big 12 championship, college football playoff. I think that would be a really smart hire. I think Joe Brady, trying to get him back into the college ranks and giving him the keys to the castle and just saying, hey, Buffalo Bills QB coach.
Oh, okay, that's a good job.
And so, get him back in there. I think even somebody like Tom Herman, if he misses on, head
Colorado
coaching
or
jobs
Cincinnati,
around the country, or, if he thinks the OC job at A&M gets him a quicker path to a big-time FBS job, more so than Colorado or something like that. I think those are names to look around. But what I found interesting was when I put out that story, I had 3 or 4 coaches, a couple head coaches, a couple assistants on offense across the state, reach out to me and say essentially the same thing, and that is no way, no how. That none of those guys on the list will get hired or get approached because Jimbo Fisher is simply not going to give up the offensive play calling duties the same way that Gary Patterson had a really hard time giving up defensive play calling duties at TCU. He hired a new DC to quote unquote be the guy. But one of the running jokes in college football would be Gary Patterson would come back from second half in a different colored shirt because he would take over play calling duties because he was upset about how it went in the first half. And so I think the storyline here, as much as it is about who he hires as Jimbo Fisher as his OC, is what he hires as his OC. Is it really going to be a guy who he lets come in and have autonomy? Or is it going to be a guy who comes in and just adds some principles and is kind of a secondary eye, secondary ear, but somebody who does not have carte blanche to just do whatever they want and call plays and however they want to? I think I lean more towards that. I think I lean more towards Jimbo not being able to do that.
Right.
Or not wanting to do that because he's making $86 million guaranteed either way, and why not go down with the ship the way you want to go down with it?
Right, I was about to say, this is my boat. right? I'm the captain, and you paid me this much to be the captain and be this, and like, I
just beat
understand
LSU.
exactly, and I understand. Like, I understand you beat LSU, you almost beat Alabama. Like, I'm doing it right. And I understand, obviously, if you're A&M fans, right, because you're seeing what he does well in terms of recruiting and just building the thing. But then you see, obviously, what he's not doing well, and it's like, that's what's holding you back. Now, I'm going to read some of his coordinators through his tenure at offensive coordinators through his tenure at Florida State. See if any of these names strike fear, right, into like, ooh, that guy. Randy Sanders, Lawrence Dawsey. You into the prolific modern coordinators
You
yet?
could be making up names at this moment. You should mix in just a few made-up names and see if anybody even like.
Right, I know, right? By the way, that was it. They just had those two. He doesn't hire.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He is what he is, right? He's a very look. If this was 2007, he'd be running the best damn offense we've seen.
Oh my goodness.
Right, he'd be coaching up quarterbacks. He'd be coaching up the best Christian Ponders you ever seen, right? Which is literally his quarterbacks, yeah. Christian Ponders. That's what he rolls out.
Kellen Mond.
Well, I mean, like I said, I like that A&M fans are giving a lot more respect to Kellen Mond because they were like, that guy actually had to relearn how to be a quarterback and actually was pretty good at it.
Pretty good.
So yeah, look, it'll be a fun thing to watch because we're going to see the real names emerge and we're like, that guy? There's going to be a couple of that guy, those names. Right. When you're A&M, and you can hire anybody. But then again, we also said that about a certain defensive coordinator hire. You can hire anybody, and you hired DJ Durkin. Yeah. So,
That's why Kendall Briles is not a name that's out of the mix.
Right, I was about to say there's let's just say there's not a. Yeah, I won't say it. It's fine. Anyway, let's move on to our actual segment.
Smart man.
Also, I think it's worth mentioning, too, that the North Texas Athletic Director, Ren Baker, has accepted a job to be the athletic director at West Virginia.
Yes.
So congratulations to him. That's awesome.
Yeah,
really,
that
he
is
did
a
wonders
big
at
bit of
North
news.
Texas, and that's really cool for him. So
yeah, that's going to be a not easy seat to fill because that's a guy who helped an indoor get built. He's brought, men's basketball, football, softball, like their programs are all on a rise right now. That's a good hire from West Virginia, I'll tell you that much. Because they're a program in need of some stability. So that's going to be something to watch. And also, obviously we're kind of set on Seth Luttrell's future right now, but typically new AD, he's not exactly wedded to head coaches when they come in. Obviously he's fine for now. He's in the
I think next year
next year is when it starts to get a little interesting. Right. It could be like they could be 7-5 and be fine again, but new hires, new administration typically is when you start to see
changes in
right? They want their guy, right? And so they want to put their stamp on, and football is typically how you do that.
But it won't be anything that happens this cycle because whoever replaces Ren's going to be hired way too late to start all that. Everything 100%. Would be, so if it wasn't already guaranteed, which it was.
It was.
It is now.
Yep.
Yeah.